I'll tell you how carts came to be. When I first started doing this, I had a 16-foot utility trailer, and I had it all built with shelves, and every tool had a storage space. We had an inventory. We knew exactly which tool was in which spot. But then we were constantly back and forth, and back and forth, and back and forth, and back and forth, and it was painful, right? So I was like, oh, it'd be so much nicer if I just had a rolling cart and I could just roll my saw in, and my saw was set up with the vacuum and all of that. So like I had a big chop saw at one point in time on a custom-made welded metal frame. I actually had a job site table saw built into a rolling frame with custom in-feed, out-feed tables and all of that jazz, when you used to actually be able to take a table saw on a job site. I used to build mounting brackets on site. I would show up with sheets of plywood in my trailer, and I would start cutting, and my partner would start installing, because we didn't have a shop. We had no place to do it, right? So like I've been there and I've done that on all of this stuff, right? And so again, back to your 4 pack outs, okay, where's your first aid kit? Where are you putting the tablet? You know, like there's things that need to be on site that aren't just the things that you need to do your specific job task. Plus, if it's not just you that you're trying to keep busy, if you're working with the crew of guys, now it's your 4 pack outs plus their 4 pack outs. And do they know which 4 pack outs to bring? Are they experienced enough to get the right stuff? Like, these are all the reasons why we're doing it the way we're doing it, right? I get that you could do it. Jim could do it. I could do it. Cameron could do it. But how do I bring in somebody that doesn't have that level of experience and explain to them what to do and how to do it? And then also the issue is, you bring a certain set of tools, he brings a certain set of tools, he brings a certain set of tools. Now one of the 3 of you calls me and says, I have a problem. What should I do? I say, oh, it's no problem. Go get your multi-drive tool that's got the hammer drill attachment. You don't need a hammer drill. Oh, well, I didn't bring that. Well, why didn't you bring that? Well, I didn't know I needed it. Oh, okay. Well, so now when we've got the kit, everybody has the same stuff, right? So I've got a reasonable expectation that if Brian calls me with a problem, I can tell him, go get this tool and use it this way. And he's going to have that tool because I gave it to him and it's part of the pack out kit, right? So when there's consistency across all the tools, it means that we can give you a solution potentially and know that you've got the correct machine to be able to implement the solution, right? So again, it's not just for one guy. That's not what we're working on here. We're working on not only the people that already work here, but what happens when we bring new people on. How are we going to get set up so that we can make that a smooth transition and tell them, hey, go get this tool? Which pack out kits are labeled? Is this one labeled? Yeah. So I don't know if you guys noticed, but we labeled everything, right, on the handles so that you know what's inside, which hopefully makes it easier, right?
Oh, yeah. Very useful.
Yeah.
Very useful.
So what's the biggest drawback to the pack outs? What's the biggest disadvantage to the pack outs? Yeah, look at this stack, right? If that stack's on the job site and you need something out of the bottom, you got to take everything off of it to get to the bottom one, right? Yeah, I get that. But would it not just be easier to roll everything out down the ramp and drive it in the store, and then you got a work table and everything you need is right there? But you got to carry that in, right? And again, if you've got it stacked, if you want to get to anything, even if it's a 4 stack, you got to unstack everything. Then you got to have some place to spread it out, and it just is all over the place, right? With the carts, you just roll it out, open the top, see what you need. If you want to take the whole case, you just unclip it and off you go. So can you guys tell me why this is like this? Why do you suppose it's white there? Right? So that you know it's missing, right? It's black and white. So when you open the battery case, if you see white, it's like, okay, I'm missing a battery. Where's my battery? Right? Everything should go back in the pack outs every single night. That way you know you haven't forgotten anything, right? Like, I know that you guys put batteries in your personal kits and on your personal tools, and you'll be wandering around with them. It's fine. Like, I'm not trying to say anybody's a thief, because I know nobody's a thief, because when we get everything back together and start going through all of this stuff, we're missing virtually nothing. Like, people aren't stealing things. I'm not trying to say that. But the problem is if you've got it in your bag and then you get switched to a different crew and now you're someplace else and you didn't put the tool back, now that crew doesn't have that battery, right? And they probably need that battery because I gave it to them for a reason. So the idea is at the end of the night, you open the pack out, you look in there, you're like, wait a minute, I'm missing something. Okay, where is that something? And go find it and put it away. And then that way we know we've always got everything, right? So this is just a quick way to have a visual representation of what you do and do not have. And again, like even for the laser kit, like you might not need everything that's in here every single night. You might not need the laser at all, right? But I think for most nights, for most job tasks, you probably need the laser. Yeah, the laser you use most nights, right? It's very rare that you're not going to use the laser. So same with the batteries. You need the battery kit, you need the chargers, right? So that all needs to get set up as well, right? And then if you're running a charger, it means you got to bring a power cord. Well, what's the easiest way to bring a power cord? Throw it on top of a table. So do you guys know what this does? That's how you lock it, right? What do you think happens if you leave it locked and you try and raise it? You strip the gears out. Yeah. I can guarantee that's what's happened to this one.
Had one that happened.
We've had more than one. Yeah, exactly. You know, again, back to best practices and training, like, you know, nothing we do requires force. If you're having to force something, you're probably doing something wrong, right? So if you're trying to raise this thing and you're heaving on it and it's not going up, that should be your indication to stop, take a step back and investigate and figure out why it's not going up. And then you're probably going to go, oh, does it have a lock? Oh yeah, it does have a lock. Maybe I should undo that lock and then it can go up with a lot less effort. You know what's even more important than not being afraid to ask questions? Don't be afraid to read the instructions because they'll actually tell you how all this stuff works, right? And if you can't find the instructions, there's this miracle that we have. You find it on a tablet. It's called Google. Just Google it. You can find all this information. And I know I'm being a smartass, but it's really that simple. It really is. Like, that's how I found out all of this stuff, right? I'll go on Google, I'll look at it, I read the instructions. Like, have any of you actually read the instructions for the Festool track saws to understand all the functionality that those things have? Because trust me, you haven't even scratched the surface of what those saws can do, right? So if you don't understand what the saw can do, how are you going to be able to use that tool to solve your problems, right? Half the problems that I get asked about in the field, you guys already have the solution, you just don't know it because you're not actually familiar enough with the tools. What you know is how to use the tools for the simple day-to-day tasks that you do on the regular. But when you run into something that's not what we do on the regular, you don't understand how the tools operate well enough to be able to know that you've got a solution. So back to this, right? Like the whole idea here is now you got access, right, to any box. This one's not labeled, but if it was, and if you want to take it with you, if you're not using it here, you just, and off you go, right? It's that simple. So that's the idea. And the idea is also that hopefully you can explain to a new person where they need to go to
Instructions?
yeah, where you need to go to find this stuff.
You don't just clip it as easy as that.
No, they don't. Right? So there's your jigsaw. And again, jigsaw blades are right there. Why don't we have batteries in these cases? Exactly. And all the batteries should go back in that case at the end of the night. That way you know you've got all the batteries, right? No. So you know, is this 100% perfect? No. Is it much, much better than the alternatives? I believe it's much, much better than the alternatives. It may have been bought for the MDF fascia, but if we did it 5 years ago and we're doing something different now, it doesn't matter what it was bought for. And I'm not trying to single you out, but we're having this conversation because this is exactly what the problem is, right? We've got people that are, oh, well, this guy said this and that guy said that and this one's, no, I don't want to hear any of that anymore. We're telling you what is meant to be and how it's meant to be, and I expect that to be followed moving forwards, right? So we know that chop saws are a problem on the job site. They create way too much dust. Just because you got away with it in Cardston because Shane's not as sticky and he's a friendly guy and he lets us do it, doesn't mean that that's the solution for all the other job sites. Go onto a Norson job site or a Fillmore job site with one of those and let me know how it works out for you, because it's not going to work out well. And again, I'm not like, this isn't about you, right? You're trying to get your job done. We understand that, but everybody is doing this like you to one degree or another. And then we have no idea who's got what, who's doing what, how they're doing it. These best practices are nowhere. Everybody's doing whatever everybody wants, right? And it's not like it's a malicious thing. We're not trying to suggest that you're not doing your job. You're clearly doing the exact opposite of that. You're like, hey, I need this saw because this is how I'm going to meet my time target. So that's great. We're not saying you're doing something wrong, but to manage an entire business and to manage across multiple jobs, we can't have 4 different guys coming up with their own ideas of what tools they should have and how they should be doing things, because it's impossible for us to manage, right? That's really the problem. And you get told by somebody that this was bought for a certain thing. Maybe yes, maybe no, right? And who is that person, and do they have the authority to tell you what to take to the job site? So there's only 2 guys that have the authority to tell you what to take to the job site. One of them's there and the other one's here. Okay? That for everybody is the end of it. All right? So I don't care what you heard from Jim, what you heard from Brian, what you heard from Jeremy, what you heard from anybody else. Those guys don't have the authority to tell you what can and cannot go to a job site. Okay? So, which you don't know because nobody's told you that, right? Exactly. So again, I'm not trying to single you out at all. Not about you in the slightest. This is just a prime example of what we're dealing with, right? So you've got reasons that you don't want to use the cart, or you don't think you need to use the cart. But your reasons don't supersede my reasons, because I'm the guy paying you. Yeah. And I have reasons why you need the cart and why all of the other guys need the cart. And I'm not saying you're wrong. Yes, I get it. There's times when you can just take 4 tools out and that's way easier. I understand that. When are those times? How do I explain to a new guy that's less experienced when to take this and when not to take this, right? So you can imagine, for me as a business owner, it's a lot easier to say, hey, we have this cart with these tools in it. You wheel that on the job site every night. Most nights you're taking things that probably you don't need. We're going to talk about that. What should and should not be in that cart, right? Because there's no point wheeling stuff onto site that you don't need, right? But it's not that difficult to just wheel the cart. And if you got 1 extra box, well, you got 1 extra box, and that's not the end of the world. Yes, we know. We're aware that it's a problem. This is why I'm saying when we get set up, we need to have a spot where all of your toolkit, if for some reason it has to be taken out of the vehicle, it's going to go in one place. You shouldn't have to find the 2x4s over there and the bin over there, and half your tools are here and we know that happens. We understand that, right? So we need to find a solution to that problem. We get it, right? But the solution isn't only take the stuff you think you need and I'll just pile in whatever I want. The solution has to be, I'll gather up all the tools I'm supposed to have, and then I'll let guys know, hey, I couldn't find my 2x4s and I couldn't find my vacuum and I couldn't find this, so I've taken these other things from the shop, right? Like, what are you gonna do? You need to leave, you need to go do your job. I get it. You're gonna just take stuff, right? Whatever you can get your hands on. That isn't a long-term strategy, right? That can't work. Guys, you shouldn't have to waste your time doing that, is what I'm saying. And it is a waste of your time to be hunting around looking for stuff. You should come here and either everything should be in the truck and you can look through and do a quick checklist to know that it's all there, or it should all be in one spot and you can do a quick checklist to know it's all there, and you fire it in the truck and everything has a place in the truck where it lives, and that's where it goes, right? We're not there yet. There's no shelves in here. There's not even adequate tie downs, right? Like, I get it. I understand there's, constraints for sure. We know we've got to improve on these things, but all of this takes time and it isn't going to happen overnight. And it gets even more complicated when I'm trying to get everybody to do it a certain way, and then guys decide that that's more difficult than, they feel like they should have to, it's more effort than they want to put in. And so now we get guys taking what they think they need and taking different tools. And again, not just you, it's everyone, trust me. So we have to get away from that. And that, when we talk about buy-in from you guys and not giving yourself permission to go outside of the best practices, this is exactly what we're talking about. This stuff here, right? So for Jim, I sent him up to Leduc a couple of weeks ago, or last week, or whenever the hell it was. He's going in the dually. He can't take the carts. There's no way, right? So then he's got to do something different. You know, obviously we're down a vehicle because of an accident. That also is another complication. We can't plan for that, right? So now I might have you in the cube van, which is really not optimal for rolling carts in and out of because it's high and the ramp's steep. I get it. There's constraints, right? But I believe firmly that if we have a properly set up full set of tools for all three of the trucks that we've got when we get our third truck back, we've got all the ramps moved out so that you can roll the carts in and out easily. We build laminate racks, we get some storage going in here. That to me is the path forward, right? And I just need you guys to trust me that that's going to be an easier way, right? And I need you guys to help try and reinforce that we're going to use the cart whenever we can possibly use it, right? That's all I'm getting at. And then we can have a conversation about what's in that cart. How are the tools organized? What tools do we have? But we have to all be doing the same thing first so that we can get some like accurate information back. A sample size of 1 is no good, right? So I always say to my kids, all those Father's Day gifts that say best dad ever, sample size of 1. They would have no idea whether I was a shitty dad or a good dad because I'm the only dad they've ever had, right? So same here. If one guy's doing it one way and another guy's doing it a different way and another guy's doing it, we got a sample size of 1. We have no idea what's working and what's not working, right? What we need is a sample size of like 4 crews, 8 guys, all doing the same thing, and then let's see what works and doesn't work, right? That's what we're trying to achieve, because we want to go from 4 crews to 6, and then to 8, and then maybe 10. Maybe Elon will get some robots going, and I can just get rid of all of you guys and just have little robots walking around. Don't think so. Not anytime soon, right? Yeah.
If you look on like these, for example, they have green everywhere. Same thing goes for the rest of them. They'll have red or yellow or blue everywhere. That's so you know if you put it in your bag and you take it through the shop, it's not yours. You have to put it back. Same thing goes for if the shop guys borrow one of these because you don't have the tool. You know that it belongs in this case and that it should be in this case. Or if you mix and match
by accident, which happens.
You know which one it goes in. There's no denying that this is blue or reds, right?
Yeah. So Mila has gone through and inventoried all of this stuff. She's got serial numbers for everything. It's all in Sortly, which is a little inventory control system that we've started using. So back to your question, like we would assign like if it's the green toolkit in here and you're taking this van, we have the ability to move the green toolkit into this van so that if anything ever happened, like the van got stolen or burnt to the ground or whatever, we would have a list for the insurance company to say, here's what was in the truck. We did some rough calculations on pricing because she put prices in for everything. What has it worked out to, like before the carts? It's called Sortly.
The green one right now is at $6,280.
And that's not including the carts. And that's not including any materials that you're carrying and none of the consumables, right? So it's more than a couple bucks in tools, for sure, right? And that's times 4. So investment for me, again, is significant, right? But, you know, like we just added square garbage cans with rollers on it. Is that easier for you guys?
Those are incredible.
Yeah. Like the answer doesn't have to be yes. If the answer is no, just tell me why. You're not gonna hurt my feelings. Same with any of this stuff, right? It's like we can have a conversation, like you said, that I think this would be a better idea. And then I explain to you why I'm asking you to do it a different way. I don't have any problem with you saying.
Like I was saying, the week before, I bring my card, right?
Yep.
But last week when I came here, I don't have a lot of stuff inside. And material, so
yep.
I need to make it sure.
You did what you needed to do, which is fine.
I need to make it sure,
yep.
okay,
I get it.
Stay here. crying about my thing or just pack up and
I get it. And at some point, you got to make that choice. And like I said, this isn't about you, but this highlights that we've got a problem that we need to find a solution to, right? Because you shouldn't have to be looking around for your stuff. It should all be in one place. And it's not. We're not set up here. There was no possibility at the old shop to do that, right? Like it was impossible at the old shop. Again, it's a best practice, right? You don't leave the keys in the vehicle. You move the vehicle to wherever you need it. You put it back in the lockbox. That way everybody's got access to it, right? Right now it's a pain in the ass because the lockbox is way over there, right? In the new shop, the lockbox is just going to be on the door by the entryway to this storage room. So it'll be very easy and convenient for everybody to get to, right? But we know there's lots of problems, right? Like you're not telling me generally something I don't already know. It's just, I got a list of problems and I got to pick the most important one and work my way down. And the keys in the lockbox, well, the keys were at one point the biggest problem because what would happen is we didn't have the lockbox and guys would go home with keys in their pocket and then there was no keys, right? So I got the lockbox to solve that problem, which actually I think has been pretty successful. You know, again, it's best practices, right? This is a theme, as you may have noticed. Yeah, and it's something that it's not static, right? It changes constantly. Like maybe a new tool is going to come out tomorrow and it's going to be the best thing ever. Maybe a respirator is going to come out that will filter out that whatever that chemical was that we were talking about earlier, right? Like I check periodically, but I mean I've been looking for like 15 years now. And to be honest, like that stuff that we're using now is mild compared to some of the stuff I've used in my career. Like I had one spray adhesive that on the SDS, it had there was a percentage of the atmosphere. So like if there was X percentage of this stuff in the air, it caused instantaneous death. And those were literally the words, instantaneous death. And I was like, holy crap, like this is no good. I got to find something different, right? So generally I look for like green, LEED certified, all of that kind of stuff. But even then you have to be careful because what I found out is when things are LEED certified, for some reason or another, ammonia manufacturers got an exemption so that they could be certified as LEED approved, but ammonia is nasty. So they're using it in the spray adhesives and the ammonia is actually very corrosive. Like it's dangerous stuff. So you're buying something that's LEED certified. Do you guys know what LEED is? No. So LEED is like a certification for environmentally sustainable construction. It's leadership in environmental energy and design, or I don't remember exactly what it stands for, but it's supposed to be green, environmentally friendly, sustainable, yada, 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 right? And I come to find out when I start looking into it that some of the stuff is actually probably worse than the stuff that we're regularly using. NAUF, MDF, no urea formaldehyde added. Urea formaldehyde, very dangerous chemical. It's in a lot of the adhesives that are used for particle board and MDF. NAUF, no urea formaldehyde added. It just means they haven't put any extra in. It doesn't mean there's none in the board, right? They make the MDF out of recycled building materials, which means all of the formaldehyde that was in the original board that they chopped down, like crunched up to make the MDF or the particle board is all still there. It just means they haven't added any more. So people get this false sense of security because it's green or it's LEED or it's whatever, right? There's Green Guard certified, like zero VOCs, volatile organic compounds. That doesn't mean that it's safe. It just means there's no volatile organic compounds, right? So these are all things that we're looking at. And again, it goes back to best practices. So I do look at a lot of this stuff. I am trying to find actively the safest products that we can find, but not only do I have to find a safe product, I have to find a product that's available. I have to find a product that will work in the field for you guys. Like we tried Semalfa, which is a waterborne contact with zero VOCs, and by all of the research that I had done, probably the best thing that we could use from a safety standpoint. guys didn't want to use it in the field because it's airborne, it takes longer to dry. And they couldn't figure out a way to stage all their material and let it dry without it getting dust and dirt and whatever else on it. And they just didn't like waiting. They're like, give us the bad stuff. We like it better. So I gave them the bad stuff. I found the best, like safest bad stuff I could find, right? We're never going to find anything that's got zero risk, right? Even water is dangerous if you have too much of it, right? Take a nap in an inch of water and let me know how that works out for you.
For lacquer thinner, like if you have work gloves, you can't use your work gloves in the lacquer.
You cannot.
Because it'll just
Soak in and then it goes through your skin.
Can we get any kind of
Yes.
nitrile
Yes.
gloves? Like
Yes.
A shitload of them.
Yes.
So guys,
100%.
us,
Yep. Yeah, we got to make sure, and I think it has to be nitrile too, right?
yeah. I'm not sure. Like,
Well, because the lacquer thinner will just chew through some of the other gloves. You guys can turn the chairs around and sit down if you want. You don't have to stand. Yeah, so again, like a lot of the decisions that I make are for reasons, right? Like when you suggested, when I was asking about double-sided tape and you suggested that alien tape or whatever, right? And I kind of went through why we're not using that stuff. And it's not because it won't work. It's just because I need to be able to get it. I need it to not cost an arm and a leg. I need to be able to buy it in bulk. Like I gave you all the reasons that I gave you. It's not that it wouldn't work, and I wasn't trying to say it was a bad idea. If we just need a little bit and we're stuck and I need some double-sided tape and I'm out in the middle of nowhere and I can't get the tape we normally use, yeah, go to Home Hardware, buy some alien tape, use it. It'll get you through perfect. That can't be the solution moving forward though, right? Like it could be if I could find a place where I could buy it in bulk and it didn't cost an arm and a leg, then, and it actually works for what we want to do, then yes, by all means, we would look at that. But, you know, I looked around. I did actually look. I tried to see if I could buy it in bulk. I tried to see it if I could get it someplace other than Canadian Tire. And, you know, there are places, but you're buying those little tiny rolls. You can't get bigger ones. So, I mean, I looked at it and I tried to see if I could find it in bulk packages or whatever, someplace where I could buy it for less money, but that's not the market that they're trying to service, right? They're trying to service a retail customer that just needs a small amount, and they're going to use 5 of the 30 feet, and then the rest is going to sit on their shelf forever until they never use it, right? But again, like that goes back to what is the decision-making process, right? It doesn't mean that it won't work, just like it doesn't mean that a certain adhesive isn't a good idea. What happened is usually when I used to do it, the last thing that we did was put the aluminum trim on, right? And we would often be doing it at the very end of the job. And I don't like spending extra nights on the job site. I like to get home and see my family. So I thought the best thing to do is put double-sided tape down so that we could stick the aluminum on, but we would just do strips of it and then we would have silicone in between. So the double-sided tape's purpose was just to hold the piece in place until the silicone set up, but we could put it in place immediately and then we could caulk and we could leave. We didn't have to wait for the silicone to set up. Otherwise, we have to glue it down with silicone, put painter's tape on, go away for a day, let the silicone set up, come back, peel all the painter's tape, then silicone, then we can go home. So that's how that came about. So I know from Jim that it doesn't, well, I know from just being on the job site that you guys aren't, not you guys, but like last year the crews they would use the tape on the outside, and I don't actually know what the guys are. What are you guys doing now for aluminum trim? How are you doing it? Yeah, so you do run into problems. Some of the walls are really bad. So there'll be times where you can't push the aluminum back and have the tape hold it because it's got too much spring force coming out. If that's the case, we got hot glue guns now, right? I think in very limited areas, you might try hot glue. My experience with hot glue is it doesn't stick to the anodized aluminum very well, but sometimes it sticks just well enough that if you use that combined with the double-sided tape, it'll hold just long enough for the silicone to set up, then you're good to go, right? Again, powered caulking guns were purchased because, you know, if you've got to caulk 300 linear feet of wall protection or more, as the case may be, like you'd be like this all night long, right? And I don't know if any of you guys have ever put a lot of caulking on, but every time you let go and squeeze again, you always get that little bubble, like that little extra spot where it's either not quite enough or a little bit too much because you can't maintain that consistent pressure. The power caulking gun, it doesn't care. You just pull the trigger and along you go, right? Yeah, obviously, like anything else, if you don't have it set up right, it isn't going to work right. Just like your spray gun, if you don't have your spray, field set properly, it isn't going to spray right. Well, we should have a spot. Like, I don't want to just have it on a bench. I want to have a spot where this is where, and I'd like to do it by crew too, right? Or by toolkit. Yeah, that's a good idea. Well, I don't even think you should be putting new ones back. Probably what we need is a spot where you put all of the sharpened blades and they put their blades to be sharpened. Right? So if you've got like I don't want to, like right now, I don't even know how many of those blades we've got and I have no idea where they are.
Well, I got like 6 or 7 that's just been sharpened.
Yeah, but I get that, but I have no idea who they're for and where they came from. Do you? Do you know which pack-out kit they came from? No, neither do I. So what I think needs to happen is there should probably be 2 fine cut blades plus an extra one that's in the shop sharp. And there should be a rough cut blade plus an extra one that's in the shop sharp, right? Because a rough cut blade is a rough cut blade. If you don't have the sharpest rough cut blade, it's not the end of the world, right? So you've got a one in the saw, plus you carry an extra fine cut blade with you just in case. And when the one that you are using becomes dull and you have to put your spare one in, then you take your dull one, you put it on the hook, but before you do that, you take the sharpened one off the hook. Now the brand new one becomes your spare, right? And if you need to swap your rough cut blades, you do that at that time as well. Then there'll be unsharpened ones hanging on the hook. You guys just have to go and look, oh, blue hook, blue crew, we take theirs. We probably should put color codes on the blades. Got to put it right near the arbor so they don't wear off. So let me ask you guys this. What are we using for cutting tables? What are we supposed to use to cut plywood? But a rough cut blade, right? So if you've got your depth set deep and you run your fine cut blade through the plywood and you're doing it over and over and over again, what do you think that's doing to your fine cut blade? Exactly. So there's a few strategies that we've used in the past, like we've glued together layers of cardboard. And if you set your blade so that it only penetrates through the top layer and the second layer can hold everything together, you can cut and cut and cut and cut on that cardboard. And it's a lot easier on the fine cut blades. They last a lot longer. Or foam, exactly. The blue foam, the rigid or the pink stuff, right? Yeah, that is another option for sure. Why are you guys setting the saw blades so deep? I already know the answer to this question, but I want to know who else knows the answer to this question. Why are the saw blades being set so deep? There's 2 reasons. One, you never bothered to look to know how deep it was. Or 2, you tried to set it to a low level, but you're cutting on a surface that's not flat, and when you get across, you start pushing, and everything bends, and now your saw blade doesn't penetrate through, so your only option is to set it deeper. How long have we had sawhorses that you can put 2x4s in? And when did we get 2x4s? So you say it's completely obvious, and I agree it is completely obvious, and yet how many guys have we had struggling to cut 45s properly for exactly the same reason? Because they're on a table that flexes while they're trying to make their cut. If you're trying to make a consistent 45 on a surface that's moving on you, what do you think's happening to your angle every time that saw moves? You're not going to get a 45. It's just all there is to it. Again, it goes back to best practices. If you're having a problem and it's not working, the solution can't be, this is fucking stupid, I'm getting a chop saw because I know a chop saw will work. Guess what? I know a chop saw will work too. There's a reason we don't have chop saws on site, right? I'm not saying they're never going to be there, but generally speaking, we're not going to have them there, right? Just like we're not going to have table saws there. There's a lot of times where it'd be super handy to have a table saw on site. Like, I get it, right? Like, it'd be really handy to have a table saw on site. So there's a few things. Dust collection, big one. Safety, even bigger one. Like, what were we talking about for the last 2 days? Cuts, right? Tourniquets, all that jazz. Like, how are you going to cut yourself with a fez tool? Like what would have to happen for you to cut yourself with a Fez tool? How did they manage it? Did they wrap their fingers around and like hold a skinny piece while they were cutting by or something? Like what did they do? So, but even then, you got to be really fucking stupid, right? How stupid do you have to be to cut a finger off on a chop saw? Not that stupid. Like you can do that through inexperience. Same with a table saw. You can really hurt yourself on a table saw. Yeah, like shit happens. But for me, there's a safety aspect to the Fez tool. For new people, it's much less intimidating because you don't have that spinning blade right in your face, right? Your hands aren't going right by that spinning blade. You've got a track. If your hand's on the far side of the track and on the saw, it's virtually impossible to cut yourself. It counter rotates. So if it kicks back, it isn't coming at you. It's going the opposite direction. If somehow you manage to like fall and the saw comes with you while it's running, the base plate pivots up, the blade disappears, it's gone, right? Like you have to do something incredibly stupid to cut yourself with the Fez tool. You know, there's multiple reasons for why I choose the tools that I choose, right? So some are more important than others. Obviously, safety is a big one. New employees not hurting themselves is a big one, right? Dust collection is a big one. The size of the Fez tool. They're smaller, they're lighter. Yes, okay, the tracks are long, they're a bit of a pain in the dick, I get it. But like, what other tool can you name that could both do the 45s in a piece of fascia and do a long tapered rip cut on a filler panel? I know the answer to that question, and the answer is there are no other tools that can do that. Is it a replacement for a table saw? No. If you need to cut strips all day, every single day as a Fez tool, what you want to use, it certainly isn't. Is it a replacement for a miter saw? No. If you're in a house doing fine finish crown molding and all that kind of jazz, are you going to use a Fez tool saw? No, you're not. But for what we do, it does the rip cuts well enough. It will do a tapered cut, which is very difficult to do on a table saw. And it's simple by just putting some very basic markings, right? And it will cut a 45 accurately if you set up the table properly and if you set up the saw properly and if you've got a sharp blade. Does it mean that it's as simple as using a chop saw? It's not. I know it's not. Like, you don't have to convince me that a chop saw is easier. I understand that it is for that one job task, but I'm looking at, I've got a bunch of job tasks to do.
Bigger picture.
Yeah, exactly. And how many tools do I need? On your one night when that's the only thing you're doing, yeah, for sure, a chop saw is actually the better choice. I know that, right? I'm not trying to say it isn't. But what I'm trying to say is for every night when we're doing a bunch of different job tasks, what are the tools that we need to be using, right? That's what I'm looking at. Yep. Well, do we need a jig for the flat fascia? I don't think we do. Can we make some kind of a jig? Because I agree, like, you might be able to figure out to use a piece of laminate. Well, and we have different types of fascia as well. Like there's some fascia that's got like big trims on the front and the back of it. And then you need a much more elaborate, and you also need the 75. You need the bigger Fez tool, the one with the larger blade, in order to penetrate all the way through. But he's right though, we should have a set jig. And then we should have it for all the crews. We don't roll with staplers in the trucks. Should we get some of those hammer staplers for that very reason? Or should we get some small like electric staplers? Yeah, but it would be better if you could just staple it down ahead of time. If you knew where your cut was gonna be, you put a staple like half an inch away or whatever, so you don't hit it with the blade, and then away you go. So again, these are all things that we can talk about, and if we need to supply extra equipment, then we'll supply the equipment, right? That's the long and the short of it. So it's same with jigs. We should probably have a look at building a jig that will work for both sides. And then we need to do an instructional video of here's how you use this jig, right? Here's how you set up the Fez tool for making these cuts, so that even if an experienced guy comes through, we can show him, here's how we do it, right? You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You can look at the video and understand how it's meant to go, and then away you go. We're not there yet. Well, as far as the Fez tool stopping, again, if you're not on a flat and sturdy work surface, as you make your cut, you're gonna push down and it's gonna start binding the blade on the backside. And the Fez tools actually have a sensor in them. I don't know if you've noticed, but when you first turn them on, it doesn't sound like they got a lot of power. But as you go, as there's more load, it starts feeding more power to the engine, to the motor. But at some point, it gets to the point where there's so much load that it just shuts down. Like it's got an automatic shut off. So that's part of the safety feature of the saw. It also has a thermal shutdown. So we were doing, when we first got them, we were doing a laboratory, and you know the phenolic resin that we use, the compact laminate that we use for the CSRs in the Walmarts, that stuff. We were doing that, but we were doing 3/4 inch. Maybe it was even 1 inch, and I had to cut them in the field because I had no shop, I had no place where I could cut them. So I did it with the Fez tool, and the Fez tool would go like 6 feet. It would overheat, shut down. And we'd have to wait for 20 minutes. When it cooled down, we could go cut another 6 feet and it would overheat and shut down. But eventually it got through it. And I mean, that saw, there's more than one. You can't tell me the one with no dust collector because I got 4 of them and probably 3 of them don't have dust collectors. So we sent 2 of them back already.
I know that you want in the red pack out.
Okay. So that's what we need to know, right?
Red pack out.
And the Fez tool should be labeled red.